Okay, well, greetings, everyone. We'll let people kind of trickle in as they will. Um, I've mentioned this a few times, but if you don't mind just putting your organization next to your name so everyone knows kind of who's in the room. To do that, you can hover over your name and click the three dots, or you can open the participant list as well. And then in the participant list under more, you're able to change your name. Okay, wow, this is a great group. I'm assuming we might get a few more people kind of trickling in. I know the registration thing takes an extra little second. So it's been over a year now since we've met. I think last year, this meeting of our CWMA was probably the last in-person, the larger last in-person meeting I attended before the pandemic hit. We still were able to get a lot of good work done at our last meeting. We talked about generating an MOU, and so we got a draft going. We sent it out to a lot of our partners, a lot of people in this room. You guys gave us some really good feedback on that. We sent it back out again, and we had over 25 signing partners. So that was really exciting for us. Now that we have kind of that paperwork underway, we're in a good place. I feel like we could engage in some strategic planning to develop strategies to make this partnership the most effective and efficient. And I don't know about you, but for me, a lot of the last year has been about finding the silver linings, right? How can we take this situation and use it somehow to make a bad situation better? So I really struggled with this meeting. I kind of wanted to use some of those fun new virtual platforms that people are using and use it sticky notes and Jamboard and really solicit some good feedback from this group on the direction of this partnership. But in the end, I decided the best thing I think that comes out of these meetings is just hearing from people and knowing what everybody's up to. And so I decided to stick with that, that we would just share, and I will be soliciting feedback from folks. So please be prepared to hear from me and hopefully give some feedback on what you want to see this partnership do. But for this next space, I think we'll just focus on sharing. That presented a little bit of a challenge because I don't know about you, but I kind of hate the popcorn thing. Like, do I go now? Is someone going to call on me next? It doesn't allow me to focus very well. So what I did is I used technology to its best advantage. And I should explain to anyone who's new in the room, what we used to do is we'd all go into our office, big meeting table, big rectangular table, and we'd all sit around it and there'd be cookies and coffee over on a table. And we'd all just go around the room and share and say what we were up to, whatever we had worked on in the last year, whatever resources we had available, whatever resources we were in need of, outreach needs, that kind of thing. So I've said, well, how do we share around a table in this space? So anyway, I created a virtual table. I know you guys are probably amazed by my technological prowess. It's pretty incredible, I know. So it's not meant to be in any order of importance. The way that I arranged this virtual table was more on some of the state and federal agencies that have kind of a broader perspective to offer, and then go around the table and get into some of the more boots on the ground work, I would say. And I want you to also note that there are a bunch of open seats. And so if you don't feel like your work fits into any of these organizations that are here, there's still a space for you. And also, I would say if you are here and you mostly just want to listen and find out what we're all about, there's absolutely no expectation that you have to jump in and share. And we'll get into more of the details of the roundtable, but I'll start with our first person at the table. Abby Anderson is here from the U, and she is going to be presenting on a new project called the Pesky Plant Trackers. And Abby, I'll stop sharing this screen. I believe you should be able to pull up your presentation.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Do you want me to do the full amount of time, like 15 minutes, or would it be best for other people to introduce themselves first?
I think you can go ahead and use whatever time you need, and then we can do our roundtable after that. That should be fine.
I just wanted to check to make sure I wasn't being a hog of the time here.
No, go for it.
Okay. Thanks, Tara. Let me get my presentation going up. All right. Hello, welcome everybody. Thanks Tara for making this possible. I wanted to also quickly say hello to some familiar people, familiar names I know are on the call right now. So hello, and some people have heard this presentation before. So yes, my name is Abby Anderson. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm staff at the University of Minnesota. And I'm staff in the Department of Forest Resources, but I always like to qualify that just a little because much of the work I do doesn't have to do directly with forests. But I'm here today to talk about a program that's called Pesky Plant Trackers. The formal name of our research is up here on this slide. It's developing phenological models to improve the management of wild parsnip and Japanese knotweed. And then, as it says there, I'm really interested in making it visible to you how you can help, because this is research and it's participatory research. So we are engaging the public to make observations and collect data. Before I go too much, I want to just give acknowledgements to all the people and the organizations that are involved in this research. Most of the core research staff are staff in the Department of Forest Resources. We're a project out of Minnesota Invasive Terrestrial Plants and Pests Center. And we work closely with USA National Phenology Network. We also have a number of Minnesota state agencies that are consultants on the program. So by Pesky Plants, our project, there, as you know, many pesky plants in mind, but we focus on two. We focus on first wild parsnip, pictured here. I'm sure people in this room probably know it by its reputation of the threat that it causes ecologically, as well as a hazard to human health. And the second pesky plant that we focus on is Japanese knotweed. Similarly, a problem in that it degrades habitats, displaces native plants, can even impact aquatic systems because it commonly grows along riverbanks and stream banks, and does cause damage to built infrastructure like building foundations, roads, drain systems, bridges, etc. So those are our two plants that we focus on, and we want to learn more about the basic biology of these plants, really, to inform management. And what we have in mind is this, the problem statement is that effective management, in order to be effective, it has to be properly timed, whether that's mowing or spraying or any other kind of management interventions. So for example, if you take wild parsnip as an example, we consider its life cycle, which is kind of illustrated in this circle. We know that certain treatment actions are going to be appropriate and at certain times of the life cycle. Similarly, we know this is true for knotweeds. So from that end of looking at the problem, we know that when plants reach certain stages, we want to plan certain interventions or certain actions. But from the other end of the problem, as far as like when are the plants reaching those stages, there's a little bit more uncertainty. And that's what our research addresses. Because if we take, for example, wild parsnip and look at some of its life cycle events, like the appearance of flowers and flower buds, flowers opening, then forming fruits and seeds, we of course know the general arc of that those life stage events, and that we can plug them into a calendar and kind of go from there from an approximation to when we want to schedule work managing these plants. But it is an approximation. And because the plants aren't reaching these life cycle stages because we come to a certain point in the calendar, plants are of course responding to local conditions. So the real process that we want to understand is the connection or the relationships between plant life cycle events and local conditions. And that little red asterisk represents, like, if we can tie together these two worlds of information, we could analyze them and develop models. So we want to be developing climate-based models of plant phenology that will improve the timing and management. So that's our research goal. One of the good things about developing models in this way is that it's more robust to climate change. That is, our research isn't locked into any one particular location or set of conditions, but it can help us understand a changing world. So if we look at kind of the machinery of our model or our approach, is that we know that weather is part of our picture, and that is what's driving plant phenology or the timing of these life cycle events. And that in turn is informing the timing of management actions. This is kind of the whole picture of where we're operating. But the problem is that we really don't have this missing piece. We really don't have much data or many observations on plant phenology. And what that would look like is records of when these plants are reaching certain life cycle events at different places across the state. That's information that we don't yet have. So that's our goal, is to get that kind of data. And when we have that data, we can generate models using a number of traits to represent the local conditions for these plants, and will help time management in the future. Actually, it's going to be really real world applicable, because our plan is to integrate our models into a website called uspest.org, which any land manager can use. And it essentially operates like a kind of calculator to help you predict when a particular infestation at a specific location, you actually like give it a latitude and longitude, will reach the appropriate stage for management. So it's kind of like a calculator. Because the problem we have in mind is that timing is critical for management. So how are we getting these plant phenology or these plant observations? How are we going to get those data? We have 3 ways that I'll outline here. The first way of getting observations about plants and their life cycles is that we have a series of growth chamber experiments. So within these large cooler-like spaces or lit up boxes, we can actually manipulate the temperature and the photo period and observe plants growing in conditions that we're controlling. Our second way is a small set of field experiments. That is, these are in formal research settings where we've planted some of these wild parsnip and Japanese knotweed plants, and we're observing their life cycle events over the course of the growing season. But it's only 5, right? Only 5 locations. And what if we could have more eyes on more plants? And that's why we have this third approach, which is citizen science, which is to engage volunteer observers to observe plants and their life cycle events. And to do this, we partnered with a project called Nature's Notebook. It's run by USA National Phenology Network, and it's run over a decade long, and it helps citizen scientists collect observations about life cycle events in plants and animals, or phenology data. So the way that it works to volunteer is that each volunteer locates 1, maybe as many as 3 plants that are suitable for observation. But I do like to emphasize here that this is really different from a lot of the concerns of invasive species management, right? Because in invasive species management, the mark of good work is to handle more plants in more places. But in our study, the mark of what makes good work is not more plants in more places. In fact, just a single volunteer, it's appropriate to observe a single plant, maybe 2 or 3. So the mark of good work for our volunteers is to make repeat observations, like at least once a week. on a single plant. And the way you are making sure that you're observing the same plant from week to week, the very same individual organism, is that you mark it with either a stake or a flag like you see in these pictures. The next step for a volunteer is that they will use Nature's Notebook. You have to kind of set it up where you tell Nature's Notebook, hey, I'm observing and this is the place on the planet Earth where I'm observing. So you put down a pin on a map and then you tell Nature's Notebook, and this is the species I'm observing. And that's how Nature's Notebook knows how to take your observations and put them in the right place so we can make meaning of them. Volunteers observe their plants every week. Our observation period is roughly March through October, but it is a volunteer program, so we have kind of a revolving door. But this is the time from March through October is when we expect their life cycle events that we're interested in observing. On the left on the screen, I have a screen grab of what the mobile app looks like. So there's a mobile app for collecting data. It's a series of yes and no questions, and in some cases, some count estimates. Here's a sampling of what observations might look like for knotweed. You're interested in the appearance of flowers and flower buds, their opening, and then the formation of fruits and eventually ripe fruits. Now I talk about observing a plant at least once a week, but the act of observing is pretty fast. It takes probably less than 5 minutes per plant. And if you only have one plant, then it's quick. But the key is geography. The right kind of volunteer will already have one of these plants growing in a place that's easy and convenient to access. So not the kind of place you have to drive an hour to get to, but the kind of place where it's part of your routine that you do anyway. My role is training and supporting volunteers through their entire process. So I have an online series of trainings. And then I also host almost once a week during the summer, what I call Tea Tuesday, which has kind of a social component. It's a chance for volunteers to meet one another and be part of something bigger in a way they can really see, even if it's just on a screen. And then we also share observations and help interpret what we're seeing. So speaking of observations, these are some of the observations we made last summer, and we are currently looking for observers for 2021. I'm thinking some people in this room might be interested in volunteering, or maybe you're a person who works with volunteers and you have expert knowledge of where these plants are and which plants might be most suitable for observing. So maybe you're more of a matchmaker kind of person. Your role is saying like, I have a volunteer who might be really interested in doing this. I'd like to pair them up with this wild parsnip plant or Japanese knotweed plant. So in Washington County, just want to review kind of the steps if you're interested, either yourself in being a volunteer or in communicating this to someone else. The first step is to locate a single plant that's suitable for observation. Then set up your Nature's Notebook. And then there's a stage where you can learn the phenophases and how to record data. So for people in this room who may be coming with a lot more expertise, I can give you resources that don't involve as much time, but I also have resources that are for general volunteers who might need to know more about plant anatomy in order to make scientific observations. So I have training options. But the data collection itself, like I said, is pretty short, 5 minutes or less per plant. So I think I'm doing okay for time here. This might just wrap up. Our website is peskyplants.umn.edu, and there's my email address. But if we have time, Tara, I'd like to, either now or it could be later, I could field questions about the project.
Yeah, we built in time for questions, so that's fine. Does anyone have any questions about this?
Would you have a packet with this information that you could send out? I might know of some people that would be interested in being observers, and if I could just give them the packet to explain to them. and have them turn that back in. Is that possible?
That's a great idea. I don't have that technically right now, but it's pretty easy to pull together. Most of our resources and the kind of the gateway into the program is online. So I'll just make up a little flyer or something for distribution if that would be helpful. Absolutely.
Yes, that'd be very helpful.
Yeah, I got something like that, and I'll just make sure it's updated and then distribute.
This is Jen from Carpenter Nature Center. Are you bordered just being in Minnesota, or can you expand to Western Wisconsin as well?
Great question. So we're funded by the Minnesota Center for the Minnesota Invasive Plants and Pest Center. So we're kind of Minnesota centric, but we think that there's an opportunity to learn wherever these plants exist. And as you know, they're broad, they're widely distributed. So no, we're not limited geographically. Nature's Notebook, that's the tool we use for all our data collection, is continent wide actually. So everything that I develop travels just like the plants. So yes, absolutely.
Any other questions for Abby? And we'll send out contact information and the notes and things like that. So if you want to connect with her, we'll make sure you have her information. It's going to be some great data. I'm looking forward to it.
I can add just one more comment is that one of the reasons I like to have an appearance and make relationships with people who are in this room now is because I fully realize that not every plant is suitable for observation, because to observe it, you have to let it live. And some places and some plants are really high priority for removal. And that's why I like to have these relationships and just help understand that and coordinate and find the best and most suitable plants.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, I know people were still just trickling in, but we're gonna try to do this as we do our normal meeting and do a round table and just share what we've been up to. If you don't mind with your name, if you could have your name and then have whatever organization you are with behind it, just so everybody might not know everybody in the room, and it can give them a sense of that. If you're unaffiliated, that is just fine too. I also unveiled my super amazing virtual table just to provide some structure to our meeting. Here it is again. I picked the most boring colors too for some reason. But what I thought is we could start off with our, I'm Tara Kelly, by the way. I don't even know if I introduced myself, but I thought we could start off with our more state agency folks for kind of the broader perspective, move into more county, park service, watershed districts, my organization, the Washington Conservation District, and continue to kind of hone in on those boots on the ground efforts that are being done. If you don't feel like you have anything you want to share, don't feel obligated at all. It's just an opportunity for everyone to gain a sense of what people are working on, what their needs are, and that can be tools, people, outreach. Maybe you have something you have to you can share and you want to offer it up to the group. Really anything, just a gauge of like where everybody's at. I think so. We have over 30 people in this space, and I know it's more than our normal meetings. And I know even the 2 hours we usually have scheduled for that often just wasn't enough time. I didn't want to schedule the meeting any longer because an hour and a half Zoom meeting is really pushing it anyways. But I think we can use the chat to really help facilitate conversations. And so I think how we should do this is have, if you're sharing, you have the space, but if you have a question for that person, put it in the chat. I'll try to act as a facilitator in that way and just keep my eye on it and let people know, hey, there's some questions for you in the chat, or even raise the question to the group. And we'll just kind of keep it streamlined that way, because I really do want to have enough time to get through anyone who wants to share. If you don't feel like any of these boxes that I have up here fit there are lots of open seats, and I'd love to hear from you if you have anything you want to offer up. So with that, anyone from Department of Ag want to open it up with everything you guys have been working on?
I can start. This is Emily. And Tara, you mentioned some silver linings at the beginning of the meeting, and a couple of months ago, Department of Ag had a, we call them concept cafes. They're put on by the commissioner's office, open to employees of MDA, just to talk about a lot of different kinds of topics. And the last one we did was along those lines of silver linings as well. And we had some speakers from the meat processing industry, somebody from the nursery industry, and somebody from an organic farm, just talking about how those different parts of agriculture had surprisingly successful years. A lot more people were interested in local foods, and with the troubles that large meat processors were having earlier in the summer, a lot of the smaller local processors saw tremendous demand for their services. A lot of them are booked out through the end of this year already. And same with nursery. There was a lot of garden centers that saw a huge increase in people wanting to do more with their yards and things like that. And so just wanted to kind of put that out there that agriculture as a whole, I think, had a surprisingly good year last year. It's not something that we take for granted by any means, but and it's not so far reflecting in how the legislature sees us with the budget session coming up necessarily. But for those who may be wanting to purchase seed and things like that for restoration projects, you may want to consider getting on those orders early. I know I've already heard that some of the seed producers may have back ordered on lots of things already. So with that in mind, just from the noxious weeds, we had, a busy year. I thought we had a lot more reports and a lot more homeowners, I think, calling into our Arrest the Pest line and somehow finding us and wanting to know about different species and what they can do to control them. So it seemed, at least in my records, that we had a lot more public, we're interacting a lot more with the public. There was the weird seed package thing that happened in the middle of the summer, where people were just getting packages of seed that they hadn't ordered. And so from that, I think we had something like close to 1,000 people contact us about what they should do. I think the number of actual samples we got was closer to 500 or 600. So we were intaking a lot of mystery seeds and mystery seed packages from July. I think it started July or August. And I think it started to trickle down finally in October. So it was definitely the weirdest thing I've seen working in Department of Ag or even, I have a horticulture background. Even with that, it was just weird. So everything ended up going to the USDA for testing as well. And their consensus is that it was part of a brushing scam. So something that if somebody receives a package, it's technically even if they didn't order it, it's weird. I don't really get it, but the company that sends it can technically use that as a way to put reviews up for companies, but so, and this was happening in, I think, almost every state. So it wasn't just Minnesota, it was nationwide. But anyway, SCAM, they did not, to my knowledge, detect any kind of pathogens or anything like that. That was kind of the first main concern, was that there are noxious weeds or pathogens that were coming in. But I don't believe that they found anything like that. It was just regular garden variety plants that were found. So at least for what I did, that was probably the weirdest thing. Otherwise, we're in the middle of the grant, the FY21 grant, still finalizing things with that. We have 2020 grants that are ongoing. Christina, I think, can talk about work that's been done and new county fines if you want, Christina. But that's kind of what's been happening. It was a pretty busy, it's been a pretty busy year, actually. So with some weird things thrown in besides the pandemic and everything else that everybody else is learning to adjust to.
Thanks, Emily.
Yeah, it was a very busy year for us weed folks. I'm Christina. I'm based out of southern Minnesota, down in Rochester, but I cover a lot of the noxious weed work in the metro as well. With this increase in people working in their yards, there have been an influx of reports of noxious weeds or mystery plants that have been coming in. We've stayed very busy over the last year. So instead of my usual one crew that we had with Conservation Corps, we had a second crew that would travel statewide, and they got a ton of work done doing noxious weed eradication. Specifically in the metro area, they worked on some Grecian foxglove work over at Afton State Park and the surrounding neighborhood. There was some black swallowwort that they worked on in the Oakdale area and then over in Ramsey County. And then we also had some bittersweet work done near Stillwater. As far as new county fines, Emily, did we have any for Washington County?
No, I think the closest was Dakota.
Yeah, so in Dakota County, there was a new report of common teasel. So it is very similar to cutleaf teasel, which Washington County has 2 reports of. It has purple flowers on it rather than the normal white. So if you are looking out for teasels, keep an eye out for that. Let's see. As far as work we've been doing this winter, Abby showed a few life cycle graphics, so wild parsnip and knotweed, and we are continuing to develop more. I'm personally working on black swallowwort, oriental bittersweet, and Palmer amaranth, and then my coworker Mari is also working on the honeysuckles and barberries. And then as far as our next year of treatments, we're kind of in a holding pattern right now. We're waiting on the legislature to sign a bill that would free up a decent chunk of money for us to continue to do weed work this summer. And yeah, that's all I have. If Monica wants to give an update as well.
Sure. So I'll keep this really short. I think Emily and Christina covered my agency update really well. So the only thing that I would like to add is that there is an EdMaps Summit coming up. It will be on March 31st and April 1st. It will be free. It will be hosted by NASMA, which is the North American Invasive Species Management Association. And the first day will be training, so how to use apps, how to work with EdMaps and your GIS systems. And then the second day will be a lot more on application. So as far as like, how are people using EdMaps? So NASMA will be sending out a save the date We should be receiving a flyer fairly soon about this, but I wanted to give a heads up now because the end of March will be here before we know it. So just wanted to let you know so you can put that on your calendar. And with that, I will stop and look forward to hearing from the rest of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great thing to get on the calendar. And I don't think I mentioned this, but we will be recording. We are recording this meeting and we'll be sending out the notes on it. So if you are trying to frantically write things down, know that you'll have an opportunity to have some notes and also revisit this meeting if you would like. And also, if you do have questions, feel free to put them into the chat box and we can use that to our advantage to kind of have side conversations if you'd like as well. So with that, I think we have Nate here from the DNR. Are you have anything you want to share with us, Nate?
Yeah, sure. I can talk from Parks and Trails. This is Nate Rank, DNR Parks and Trails Resource Specialist. I cover Afton State Park, William O'Brien State Park, Gateway and Browns Creek State Trails, and there's some other public water access sites and other parcels that we do resource management work on. With 2020 and the pandemic, we lost out on a lot of volunteer and CCM time. So we didn't get as much work done as we have in the past, but just continued on projects we've worked on in the past: foxglove, bittersweet, parsnip, barberry, buckthorn, etc. And yeah, thanks Christina and MDA for sending some CCM time to help at Afton with the foxglove project. And otherwise, I know there's wildlife and SNA and other DNR staff that do invasive species work in the county, but I can only speak for Parks and Trails, but I think they'd probably say the same thing with less work with the pandemic kind of minimizing our field time. So I guess that's really all I've got.
You kind of had probably less help and also more visitation and all of the associated challenges with being inundated with people visiting, which is a good thing. But
yeah, and with that increased visitation, I wouldn't be surprised if new things start popping up at our units as well.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about when Emily was sharing, was like, I wonder if things moved around less just because everything kind of slowed down, less traffic, less movement. But at the same time, you had all these people now entering all of these natural spaces, and what effect is that going to have? I think it might be I think it could go either direction, probably just showing up differently.
Hey Nate, this is Dan McSwain, Washington County. Just curious, what have you been doing for barberry control? We're seeing that increase in a couple parks right now. Just have you had any treatments that have been very successful with that?
Yeah, we've had, this has been going on at Afton, especially since before I took over, but we've got crews that come in and do backpack spraying. They just go through the whole one side of the park, and it's timing, I think, is the biggest thing, because when everything's green, it's easy to walk past it, but then if you time it right, it's easy to find, and then if it's too late, then it's kind of a needle in the haystack trying to find it. So yeah, that's what I've had crews do in the past, and it seems to be pretty effective. I can share more info with you later, Dan, if you want. But yeah, that's what we've been doing, is just having them walk with backpack sprayers, and timing is the critical part of that. So.
Great, thanks, Nate. Next, I put Bowser on here. I know Tara's in the room. Is there anything you wanted to share, Tara?
Hi, good afternoon. Yes, I have a list of 3 items.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so with the Bowser CWMA program, we're kind of doing a reboot of the program. So we're in the process of assessing it. As you know, it's kind of an every other year grant cycle. And so we are interested if people have input. We're interested in hearing any input from folks. It's a program that really we have limited time to work on. But it sounds like there is funding in the works, but they're working with the legislature, and we'll know more in May of 2021 at the end of the session if funding is available for another CWMA grant RFP. So there's no guarantee, but the expectation is that we would receive funding. The RFP would be in the fall or winter, so this coming fall or winter. It does go through like a 5-6 stage process internally for an approval process to get that going. So more to come on that. The second update is that we're starting to work on the Minnesota state seed mix update. And so there's many mixes that were developed by Bowser, MnDOT, and DNR staff about 10 years ago. And they're in need of adjustment to meet emerging needs. And the mixes were initially developed for mitigation and roadside projects, but so those mixes, there's about 30 standard mixes or so. Hi, Cameron. And more recently, we've developed about 40 pilot mixes to address other types of landscape uses, such as solar, landfill, impoundments, and pollinators. And so these mixes are used by multiple agencies, organizations, seed vendors, and really planted over thousands of acres each year across the state. So it's important that we're having a wide range of stakeholders with different perspectives and experience involved. We did have a stakeholder meeting that was held online this past month in January. And this is a group of vendors that was state agencies, LGUs, tribes, nonprofits, contractors, etc. And so if you are interested in being a stakeholder, please let me know. And I'll add you to the email list, and I'll send you the recording from the meeting. And we did have a little survey that we put together just to kind of get more input from folks. And then the last update is the What's Working for Conservation website that's up on the Bowser website. We are updating that. I'll put the link in the chat after. But when you look at the website, you'll see there's a lot of content from over the years. And so we're kind of doing a 2020 update. And a little bit about it is that we see value in collecting the history of conservation work that's taking place in Minnesota and capturing the experience and voice of staff who lead or have led those efforts, and providing photo examples as well. So it kind of becomes a snapshot in time for current and emerging professionals. And over this winter, we've really been reaching out to folks to kind of gather new content and update this part of the website. So if anybody in the group is interested, we are welcoming, further contributions, and maybe you have a case study or lessons learned that you've done in the field. So just let me know. And then there are topics related to AIS and terrestrial invasive plants, along with CWMA insights on there. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. And you're welcome to ask questions in the chat, and we can either have them as a large group or have conversations going on there too. So with that, are there any other state agency folks that would like to share at this point? Okay, maybe we'll move on to our county folk. I just had county, but I think we have 2 counties in the room, so we can both talk about what you've been up to.
Dan, it's your area. You go
I'll
first.
let you guys arm wrestle.
Yeah, I think we're okay. Well, hey, it's related to that. And maybe I missed it during Christina or Monica's or Emily's presentation, but I know that we had a few cities apply for noxious weed control grants. And did I miss that as part of the presentation? Have those grants been awarded?
This is Emily. We're still in the process of
reviewing them. So we're hoping in the next couple of months that we'll get everything finalized.
Okay, perfect. And do you happen to know how many cities or townships within Washington County applied? Just it felt like there was a few that may have applied this past year.
I don't off the top of my head. If you want to email me, and I could get you some information if you want.
Okay, yeah, perfect. I mean, whenever you have it is fine. So I'll just start off with that. As you all know, there was more people out and noticing vegetation in their backyards, sometimes pointing out the obvious and other times not. So it was a good mix. So when it came to just overall county issues, so again, my name is Dan McSwain, Natural Resource Coordinator with Washington County Public Works, and my focus is in parks, but I also handle some of the county ag inspector responsibilities. So some of the outreach, and I'm just going to kind of cover what were the issues I was hearing across the county. Wild parsnip at West Lakeland and Baytown Township that came up this past summer. I saw Marianne, you are on the call, and I think I saw you on the chat. Marianne's with West Lakeland Township, and she's doing a great job with control initiatives with wild parsnip, and we were trying to work together to try to get Baytown to hopefully start taking steps too as they share a road with each other. So wild parsnip was a concern in the southern half of the county. It appeared overall, though, when it came to wild parsnips along county roads, we were making progress. I don't know if anyone else had thoughts on that. I didn't get Jennifer, I see you're on the Zoom too. I didn't get an email from you this year, so I assume that means it's doing okay down there. It's doing good. Okay.
We
Wonderful.
have that Uber volunteer, and I saw him out even with the COVID precautions. So we're good.
Okay, nice. That sounds great. And related to that, just as far as like county noxious weed mowing and spraying, it was very difficult this past year. So we were actually telling a lot of people, no, we don't have time to get to it because we were dealing with flooding issues in this central part of the county, pumping out a lot of lakes. So wild parsnip, oriental bittersweet was brought up in Delwood area. Knotwood was being dealt with by Lake St. Croix Beach. There was a few different conversations going on with purple loosestrife. Some I know that Cameron's on the call, he was helping out with on a county road. City of Stillwater, I don't know if Taylor's on this call, but he was interested in a biocontrol for purple loosestrife and implementing that in the city of Stillwater. And then knotweed was also brought up. And I know, Zach, you're new, I don't know if it was Forrester, but he had reached out and we were playing phone tag with a noxious weed grant too. So a lot of different plants of concern out there in the county right now. And then from that, just kind of bringing it back to parks, as other organizations, we were cut this past year as far as staff out in the field. So that was interesting trying to get work done, even with the increased use. So our primary focus was on parsnip and tansy at Lake Elmo Park Reserve and at St. Croix Bluffs Regional Park, and just isolated spots that we have kind of on the edge of trails along the prairie. So that was a big one. And then garlic mustard, we were partnering with South Washington Watershed District. So Tony, who's on this call, we had, I think, year 2 with the goats within the ravine. So that's been very successful. We have some areas where there's been grazing for a couple years and then no grazing, and the side-by-side differences are pretty dramatic. So if you're down at Cottage Grove this upcoming year, maybe just look right off the paved trail and you can see areas grazed and not grazed. And then when it came to kind of other work in the park, we were using, I was just going to share this because it was our second year using it. I wonder if I can share on Zoom, actually. Let's see. Oh, it
Do I
doesn't
need to
allow
give
you to do
you
it.
sharing permission, Dan?
Yeah, no worries. I'll just name the company, even though
Okay.
I'm not supposed to name companies. We were using a electronic dispenser backpack sprayer from a company called Green Shoots, and it allows you to really dial in how much herbicide you're using. And I thought we had a cost savings using the backpacks. They're a little more expensive. They were like, I think it was $400 for a backpack. And so that's 4 times the cost of a normal manual backpack. But I thought it paid off as far as reducing the amount of herbicide use. So I just wanted to share that with everyone in case you have issues with those manual backpacks as well. And then we also use goats at, so not only Cottage Grove, but like Elmo Park Reserve, and we were using them to set back regrowth of shrubs in areas where we did initial removal. And combined with that, we have a few different test plots going on right now, one with a single year graze for 3 years, no chemical being used. That's doing pretty well in those locations. This past year, we did a double graze with 2 30-day or 1 30-day rest period in between to allow the root reserves to be used up and knocked back again. Followed up with some spot spraying of those resprouts and then forestry mowing and seeding. So there's some action with that as well. And if you're interested in seeing any of that, you can reach out to me and I can give you a tour of some of these project areas. So with that, that is all.
Thanks, Dan. Justin, do you want to give us an update of anything you guys have been working on our shared boundaries over there?
Yeah, a couple of things I think you'd all be interested in. Hi, Justin Townsend, Ramsey County Soil and Water Conservation Division of Parks and Recreation. Long name, same stuff as Tara's doing, basically. A couple of things that would interest you all. Some new ones. Lesser Calendine was found in the Sweet Hollow area, St. Paul. So that one's new and emerging, new to me. We're going to take a strong look at that one this spring. Also, a lot of Amur cork tree has been popping up. It's not necessarily new to us, but more and more it's being noticed. So keep an eye out for that one as well. We've been working on a lot of border area stuff with Oriental Bittersweet, in particular Rutherford Park, which is White Bear Township, right off 96. It's right on the edge of the county. Teasel, there's a site right on the edge of the county. That seems to be relatively under control, but just keep an eye on that area. And Phragmites. Phragmites has been our big push. There's a Metro Phragmites consortium that has been taken care of by Anoka County, and a lot of those treatments along White Bear Lake were taken care of by that grant. A lot of interesting stuff coming up this year with boot brush stations and some more prevention pieces that I'm hoping to work on. So as that comes out, I will share that with you all hopefully next year, or if we have another meeting in the fall. But yeah, if there's any questions, I'll put my email in the chat box. And if you have any particular questions, feel free to email me about up and coming things coming at you from the West.
Thank you, Justin. Justin's been a huge help in kind of sharing their process, and a lot of the MOA language that you saw came from their MOU, and also a really awesome strategic plan in progress over there. So it's just nice to have a neighbor who's willing to share and keep us updated and partner. So thank you. I don't think there's any other county level staff. You could argue we are, but we have to go in order of my table. So now let's, any park service, National Park Service folks wanna share?
I guess I'll jump in here. I'm Isaiah Messerly with the Great Lakes Invasive Plant Management Team for the National Park Service. If you're not familiar with the teams, we service a network of 12 national parks across 4 states. And we are based at the St. Croix National Scenic Riverway. Of course, with COVID, we weren't able to do our normal travel schedule. We have a pretty robust travel schedule where we're traveling around the parks, helping them out with their invasive plant projects, and that just didn't happen this last year. We were able to get out and do some work locally around the St. Croix National Scenic Riverway. I think we spent the majority of the field season down at the Arcola Mills area, just north of Stillwater, doing a lot of buckthorn control work, prepping sites for some, I think it's about 160 acres prep work for some native savanna seeding that was happening this fall. We've been working on that site for quite a while now, and it used to be 100% buckthorn, and now we got it down to where we can actually put some seeds in the ground. So that was pretty great. Kept that project on target by being in the local area. We also were trying to do some. We talked about European dewberry last year at this meeting in the Ferry Falls area. We weren't able to get that done. We had some issues in the Ferry Falls area. I think they closed down access because of COVID and some parking issues, and the park is still kind of working through some of that. As part of that, obviously we can't park there to do our work until we really figure out what the permissions are. The parking situation is there. So hopefully this next year, I know it's on our work plan to get back down to the Ferry Falls area and do some Oriental bittersweet, Grecian foxglove, and some dewberry treatments. Over this last year, we talked a little bit last year about potentially getting a remote operated forestry mower, and we were able to get one of those last year. So that should help out with our buckthorn removal projects. It'll work on 60-degree slopes. It can clear out 3 acres or more of buckthorn in a single day. Whereas, we've been working with Conservation Corps crews and our team. That's something that would take several days to do. And this machine will do it in just a few days. So that's a great addition to our equipment repertoire that we have on our team now. And plus it's kind of cool and fun to operate and see in action too. So that was great. I don't know, you guys remember Byron Carnes? He retired this last year. He was the aquatic ecologist for the St. Croix National Scenic Riverway for many, many years. He worked in the park for probably 20, 25, 30 years maybe. And he just retired this last year. So the park is getting ready to hire a new aquatic ecologist that'll help with invasive species and aquatic mussel surveys and pretty much everything aquatic along the St. Croix. I will mention again this year, we'll probably be getting another $800 funds for helping support our volunteer efforts with the Park Service. And we typically like to give those funds to CWMAs for purchase of tools and things to build their community tool sheds. So if you guys need any, I remember we had a little bit of a discussion about it last year and maybe exchanged some emails later on in the season after those funds had already been used, but we can purchase some limited types of equipment, nitrile gloves, rakes, shovels, loppers, bow saws, those sorts of things to help build the tool shed if we're getting ready to go down that route. Other than that, I don't know, Stephen, he's our field crew leader. He's on the call as well. I don't know if I forgot anything there, Stephen. I'll turn it over to you and you can fill in some more if I've forgotten anything.
Well, I think you pretty much covered. Everything. Spend most of our time there at Arcola, right north of Stillwater, and we were able to also get a couple of Conservation Corps groups in there as well. But I think that covers everything that we did.
Okay, thanks for the update. I think we're all having equipment envy right now. Forestry mower sounds fairly awesome, especially on those slopes down to the river. And I was going to ask you about that, like small equipment grant you mentioned last year. We were getting kind of a wish list together, and then I think by the time we got it organized, you had run out of funds. But I will put out the offer that if there are, local LGUs or nonprofits that have, you know, a wish list and want to organize it, and we can all just kind of submit it as a group. I'd be willing to help organize that. So let us know. So that was national parks. I know there's a couple watershed districts on here. Do any of you guys want to give an update?
I can give an update. This is Tony from South Washington Watershed District. Dan McSwain from Parks spoke to our probably the largest project we're working on, which is down in Cottage Grove Ravine Park. And we're gonna be working in the coming year with Friends of the Mississippi and Parks to expand that work to do significantly more restoration of that Cottage Grove Ravine Park. So we're looking forward to that. Working a lot, again, as Dan pointed out, with goats and mowing, forestry mowing, both tackle the garlic mustard and buckthorn. I have another project that's about 7.5 acres of woodland forest savanna restoration. And that's involved the use of forestry mowers, thanks to Zach Doctor from the city of Cottage Grove, who I think is on. And we're in that particular case, we ran across, basically, I was hoping to use the ash on the site for some vertical structure, complete infestation by emerald ash borer. So we ended up taking all of the ash and lots of Siberian elm. So it's a pretty significant change on a school site in Cottage Grove. And we'll be getting goats in there come May. With the success we've seen at Ravine Park, it's pretty encouraging to see how the goats have been working in conjunction with a number of other techniques to control buckthorn. That's sort of my primary invasive species targeted issues this year. So.
Thank you.
And I'll just give the little update from Ramsey, Washington Metro Watershed District. We don't have a lot of projects in Washington County. Where our project sites are is mostly along Tanner's Lake and Battle Creek Lake. We do regular maintenance of those water control structures that have been restored to native plants. So we've done in those areas. Something we do offer that is more broadly of interest to folks in cities in our district. We have a stewardship cost share grant that can be used for invasive species management as part of habitat restoration. And that's a 50% cost share to property owners within our district, both homeowners and larger commercial or school government type facilities. So just so everybody's aware that that is available and this can be found on our website.
Great, thanks. I haven't worked with your watershed directly, but I've seen a lot of really cool buckthorn removal projects that have been done through your cost share. So that's a great option.
So hi everybody, Mike Eisensee with the Carnelian Marine St. Croix Watershed District. We're in the northeast corner of Washington County. I just figured I've got my map up here anyway, so I figured I would share it. We also have a cost share program for buckthorn removal within 50 feet of a stream corridor, 100 feet of a lake shoreland area. We have 80 square miles and it includes 31 lakes and 22 streams. So that program has generated a lot of interest over the last year and a half, but specifically in this area, if I zoom out a little bit, here's Big Marine Lake. This is the St. Croix. This is Mill Stream, which actually starts up in the William O'Brien State Park area for its headwaters. But we've got numerous landowners working in this area on some very large buckthorn removal projects. So this whole wetland complex through here is currently going under the initial removal process, as well as this one. And then we've done quite a bit of work on this lower portion as the watershed district for control. And Cameron and the crew for the Washington Conservation District will be doing a lot of work this summer in that area to continue the control efforts through here. So I think that in general, you know, as you can see in the district, especially along the St. Croix Riverway, where we have a lot of steep topography, buckthorn is a major issue, and maybe you can see it better on Hillshade. And that's why we initiated the grant. And you know, it's always the program's its story is always a good one because it's such a success. It may be too good of a success because in the third year now that we've been doing this, as word gets out, more and more landowners are participating, which I think the best part is that the 50% cost share within those buffer zones for those water bodies is really the start. And then a lot of landowners are investing thousands of dollars in order to continue that work through the rest of their property. So we're definitely looking how we can expand the program and continue this. A lot of it has to do, I think, with teaching, doing that technical assistance and teaching landowners how to actually manage their property. And we've also tapped into the DNR for our larger woodland parcels and their program to create management plans. And Tara Kelly is out on a large number of sites every year working with landowners. So if there are ideas out there or ways we can partner, I know that we've got the folks with national parks, who I've only been the administrator for a year and a half, and we haven't met yet and coordinated our efforts, as well as with Parks and Trails, which I started a conversation with Nate today, so I appreciate that. But feel free to contact me, and just know that we're definitely interested, especially along the Riverway, and working in this, because it's a big topic. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. I'll second that program is getting to be very popular. I think I have 5 site visits next week right in that area. Can we wait till it warms up just a little bit? But it is nice to get out and meet with people even this time of year. Any other watershed districts? I'm gonna get back to my table so I remember where we are. I think that might have been all of them. Washington Conservation District, Brett or Cameron, do you guys want to provide an update?
Yeah, I can start. So with we've been working with the MDA grant on Grecian foxglove management. It's been multiple years of that species around Afton and Stillwater Township. And then this year we also did some initial outreach and treatment for Oriental bittersweet in the Dellwood neighborhood. So we were able to get a first round of landowners signed up and first round of treatment with plans for next year for them. And then the other activity we've done related to this is continuing to address the golden creeper or red hailstone infestation in the Mulberry Ravine in Stillwater. So that's continuing to work on that with MCC crew help especially. And that's what I have. I don't know if Brett has things to add as well. Brett was very helpful in incorporating all of our data in ISM Tracker this year, MDA program.
Yeah, I think you hit on all points. Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you all. I recognized a few faces from my time in Ramsey County with the St. Paul Parks and Rec. So good to see you all again. And this is my first year with WCD and first meeting here. So it's been nice hearing from all of you. And yeah, ISM Track is a great tool. I'd love to schedule like a brown bag session with that, and we can work through some of the features on that site. I think there's a lot of capability there, and it'd be good to talk through some of the functions on that site with you all who are using it. So.
Great, thanks guys. And if you have questions, yeah, feel free to enter into the chat, or I think we're doing okay on time. So if you want to shout them out too, I think we'll be good. cities and townships are up next, and I meant to give kind of a shout out to our cities and townships earlier when I was talking about the MOU, because it was just kind of this hidden, I guess, blessing that the process of going through the MOU really encouraged us to reach out to some of our cities and townships that we really didn't have a relationship with in the past. And I was actually kind of floored by how many cities and townships, without having much interaction with our partnership, jumped on board. And so I was just surprised. It was a really nice surprise to find that. And I know some of them are in the meeting. It'd be great to continue that partnership and reach out to even more of them that couldn't make the meeting today. So I don't know if there's any cities or township folks who want to share what you've been up to or what your needs are. We're happy to.
I'd like to piggyback off what you just said, Tara. This is Ken Johnson. I'm with the city of Afton,
Okay.
Public Works. So this is a little out of my wheelhouse, and I've been listening in to do a little gathering of facts to take back to my administrator. Afton currently doesn't have an organized weed program. We would rely a lot on the districts, local, state, federal agencies. We would certainly like to hear what may be available to small cities. We are largely rural, and we do field quite a few questions every year from our residents regarding weeds in their yards and along roadsides and so forth. So I guess, like I mentioned, I'm here to kind of reach out and see if there's some way we can gain additional help in the future and participate maybe more directly in a program of trying to control the weeds here in Afton.
Yeah.
I know we do have a lot of homeowners that are, as other people have mentioned earlier, are fighting the buckthorn. So we do have a lot of effort with regard to that noxious weed. I know some of the other local weeds that people have mentioned are the garlic, mustard, of course, and the bittersweet. I have had people calling in saying they're seeing that through the course of summer. So again, and we're here listening and are glad to be aboard.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I know we met, and I'm trying to remember if it was with you or Ron about some roadside mapping in your area.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be a really good first step for cities, especially the lands that you have some management of, to know where the species are and then put together a plan to address them. So I know that was something we wanted to help do, and we just need to think about how to strategize and find some funding to do it. But I think for all cities and townships, that would be my recommendation as a good first step. So I'll continue to work on that and brainstorm on that issue.
Yeah, I'll jump in next. This is Lauren Coda, Environmental Services Superintendent, City Forester with the City of Oakdale. We do a lot of buckthorn removal pretty heavily, and COVID's actually been good for us on that because STS, Washington County Sentenced to Serve crews were looking for a better method to distribute their crews. So we get them every Friday now, which has been really good for our buckthorn effort. And the snow has been good too. We're able to set them up in the woods and start a fire and let them cut. So other than that, we do quite a bit of garlic mustard spraying, tansy work, couple of sites, or one big site, Japanese knotweed. We did a pretty good chop and drop and spray, chop and drop twice and then spray on that big site last summer. So it'll be interesting to see how well it's gonna be effective for us. So we got a little bit of wild parsnip. So I'll try to get my boots on the ground tech to contact Abby, and maybe we got a couple sites that will work for you. Barberry, we got a couple of sites that's mostly monitoring now. We sprayed a couple of big plants out in the middle of Oakdale Park. Some Oriental bittersweet that is mostly monitoring now. We get a few plants that pop up here and there that we catch, and we have some volunteers that are looking. And then the big black swallowwort patch, which is mostly a monitoring for us. Monica Chandler has been dealing with most of the spraying on that. So we're monitoring and we're picking seed pods basically on the black swallowwort stuff. Something that maybe none of you are aware of yet, I don't think I've let this out. I've been spraying it myself for several years. I'm going to turn it over to my tech now, and he'll be putting it on the EDMAPS, which is a Japanese angelica tree, Aurelia elata. I don't know if that's elsewhere out there, but one of our master gardeners in the town here has it in the swamp next to her house. And I've been spraying it with some basically Garland 4E Pathfinder. Just been actually I've been painting it is what I've been doing, the stem, just 4 inches on one side of the none of them are more than say 4 to 5 feet tall. And it started out with 3 plants. I painted a 4-inch strip on one side of the stem at the base, and all 3 plants died. Next year it sprouted somewhere else. So I don't know if it's seeds or rhizomes or what, and did the same thing and killed it, no problem. Next year it popped up a little bit further away. So yeah, we'll pay attention more to that. You guys can look it up. I don't know that it's in the EDMAPS species list because I couldn't find it. So that's why I'm gonna give it to my EDMAPS expert and let him work on it a little bit. At least it'll get entered then. So, and that's about it for us. I'll let Dan chime in if he thinks I missed anything. Dan?
No, I don't think there's anything else.
Okay.
Well, thanks for your update and all that hard work. I know I'm gonna have to look that one up. Normally when things like pop up, you're like, yeah, I heard about that in Wisconsin or Iowa, or I haven't heard of that one. Yeah, it looks like Monica wants to connect with you on that species. So, and how it's reported. So that'll be good information to put in there. Any other cities, townships want to pipe in? You don't have to update us if you just want to listen to what everyone else is up to.
Yeah, I'd like to pipe in.
Oh, okay, hi.
Yeah, this is Taylor. I'm from the city of Stillwater. So nice to meet most of you. I've communicated directly with probably 4 or 5 of you. A lot of you have been a really big help to me this year. Pretty new in town, just started in June. I'm the first full-time natural resources technician here in Stillwater. So I guess what I'm up to is really I'm sort of starting everything out from the ground level, just trying to create the infrastructure to tackle and accomplish projects. It's kind of slow going, but you know, I'm chipping away at it. As I told Dan before at one point earlier in the year, I'm really an arborist and an urban forester kind of masquerading as a natural resources generalist. So a lot of this stuff, I'm a little out of my element, but slowly but surely getting there. As he mentioned, I'm trying to tackle a purple loosestrife problem on Lake McCusick, especially because I think it's really worth preserving the native loosestrife population that's there. So I did apply to the MDA Noxious Weed grant. I applied for that, but I also do have a kind of local citizen interest in tackling it too. So again, still kind of building connections, which is cool. We did bring goats in this fall along Long Lake. We have an 8-acre area, an open space area that's really infested with buckthorn. So that really, that one keeps me awake at night. I spend a lot of time working on that one, trying to figure out how I'm going to go about doing it. sentence to serve crew that was just mentioned by Lauren. So I'm probably going to look into that. That's a pretty good idea. Trying to just sort of create and build, trying to start a volunteer kind of program here in Stillwater. Starting to create an invasives map just to kind of give myself some spatial reference for it. You know, even smaller things like I'm trying to purchase a collection of hand tools, and I think I'm going to be able to secure some money from the city, from my supervisors for that. So that's cool. And then right at the end of the year last year, I found some Japanese knotweed. So that was great. Right underneath an oak wilt issue I'm having that was spreading very quickly. So kind of a 2-for-1. I'm very lucky. And we sprayed it at the end of the year. I guess we'll see what it looks like this spring. I'm a little nervous, but you know, I do actually 2 really quick things. I have a couple of questions. I don't know if anybody wanted to contact me directly in the chat about this, but I'd like to talk to anybody who has experience just working with and hiring like a conservation corps crew. If anybody has any knowledge. And then I am looking at applying for an ECP grant right now. So if anybody, admittedly, I haven't looked into it very much, but if anyone has any experience with the Natural Heritage Database Review section of the grant, I'd just love to pick your brain on it for 5 minutes or so. That's all I got.
Yeah, I can respond just quickly to that. We have hired Conservation Corps through like the Clean Water Fund grant program, but I'm guessing if you want to go through and just hire them outright, now is the time. So there's probably other people in the room who have done it not going through that grant program. And also on the ECP grant, our office can run an NHI for you if you need it. So just let me know the area, and Aaron at our office has done the training and has access to that data, and he can do that. I know you can ask the DNR to do it as well, but sometimes it's just easier to run it quick. And
anything's easier,
yeah. Thank you for sharing. And any other cities, townships out there that want to jump in? All right, I think we're and keep in mind there are open seats. We are getting a little close to 2:30. I do want to save some space for our nonprofits though. I think there's at least 4 or 5 of them in this space. So I know there's not another group coming on to this Zoom account until 3. Totally understand people have schedules and commitments and certain fixed amount of Zoom time, but I'll keep the space open as long as people have need to share or want to give updates, but know that if you have to run, no judgment. We all have time limits and things like that. So with that, any nonprofits out there that want to give us an update?
I don't necessarily have an update, but I'd just like to say hi really quick. I'm Haley Golds from the Minnesota Land Trust, and this is my first meeting with you all. I'm managing the private lands restoration program for the Land Trust statewide, and we're really growing. I have a couple projects right now in Washington County, actually one on Old Mill Stream near the projects, one of the projects Mike was talking about actually, and then a project with Tara Kelly. And we'll probably have more coming down the pipeline, and I imagine I might partner with some more people on this call. So I just wanted to say hi.
Good, yeah, I'm glad you could make the meeting.
I'll go next. I'll go next. My name is Yvonne Hunt, and I'm the chair of the St. Croix Valley chapter of the Prairie Enthusiasts. And what we do all winter long is manage invasive weeds. But I was happy to see that Abby is willing to let Wisconsinites participate in the Pesky Weeds site. We have one site in Minnesota that we manage along the St. Croix River Bluff, but the rest of our sites are in River Falls. And I think that I can get some volunteers to start monitoring weeds and uploading information to the app.
All right, Tara, I'll jump on behalf of Carpenter, and then I'll let my guy Sphere, who's also on the line, fill in anything I missed. This is my first meeting, as well as I think it's Spare's. Claire, who you all know, who has done a lot of our habitat work, is retiring from Carpenter early so she can run her own thriftless orchard. So we're excited for her, but we'll miss her. In January, we brought on a new naturalist, Abby, who's been running our habitat and invasive species work on our Wisconsin site once a week. And she actually found, when we weren't closed down due to restrictions, she had an increased participation by University of River Falls students that were looking for field work, and the professors supported them coming out to our place. Of course, our volunteer work is lower. Just we can't have that many people together, but we've kept going with what we can. We have 425 acres in Minnesota and 300 in Wisconsin. We're focused primarily on buckthorn, some parsnip removal on both sites, but we caught that pretty early and seem to have a pretty good handle on it. Tansy population on the Wisconsin campus, which is mostly controlled. Spotted knapweed, which is awful. A tiny little bit of barberry, some black swallowwort on the Wisconsin campus. And we're also struggling with cattails taking over our rubber linered wetland and aspen trying to outcompete our prairie. And I'll stop talking and let Spare fill in if I missed anything.
I think that covers everything. This is my, like she said, my first call as well. Just happy to be here.
Thanks, guys.
I can jump in. This is Karen Schick with Friends of the Mississippi River. And first, I just want to say this has been really interesting. This is also the first time I've been attending this meeting, and it's really great to see all the different projects and all the things that are happening everywhere. So it's, and I'm really interested in Abby's work, and I hope that is able to get expanded to all the myriad other plants that we need to be tracking and trying to get the phenology on those. That'll be really helpful. So just a couple things real quick. I wanted to mention that one of the things that we struggle with is, like for instance, with our buckthorn control is, it's one thing to be able to control the buckthorn, but it's another thing not to decimate everything else. And so that's been one of my primary interests, is really minimizing the impacts to the native species and trying to figure out how to do that. And so we've been experimenting with a number of different kinds of methods. So pretty much every time I do some restoration work, and we work in, my projects are mostly in Southern Washington County and in Dakota County. And so I try to incorporate, some sort of experimentation, if not, hardcore research, but at least some sort of experimentation so that I can try and compare different kinds of methodologies. And so we have one study at Hampton Woods where we're looking at, this is Dakota County, and we're looking at different forestry methods, comparing that with hand cutting. And I should have some results on that. I think this later this spring that I'll be writing up on that. It's not hardcore research, but at least it's some, a little bit better than anecdotal information. We're looking, like Dan mentioned, some of the tools from Green Shoots, and we've been encouraging our contractors, requiring most of our contractors to use daubers, but there's a difference between daubers versus foam applicators, and so we're doing a comparison on that to see which one is actually taking up the chemical better, and if there's a difference that way. And then we are planning to also work with the owner of Green Shoots this year to compare that backpack sprayer that Dan was talking about. It's a low volume foam sprayer, and compare that to just the regular backpack sprayers in terms of what the effect is on the native plants. Because oddly enough, the owner didn't actually know. He knows that it targets the plants, the buckthorn plants better, hits the plants better with less collateral, less drift of the spray, but we don't really know, like, does that actually mean less impacts on the native species? So we're talking about, we're planning on doing another project this year to look at that. So that's kind of some of the things that we're looking at these days.
Thanks, Karen. When you write up that study, especially on the buckthorn I'd love to see it, because it's hard not to justify sometimes the heavy-handed approach, and sometimes it is the right approach. But it would be nice to know the trade-off and where that tipping point is in terms of that understory disturbance.
We'll need more studies, you know, so it's one starting place, but at least we'll have, you know, something to.
Yeah, it's a start.
I'll jump in, Tara, and talk about Bellwin a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm Lynette Anderson from Bellwin Conservancy down near Afton, and 2020 was actually a pretty productive year for us. We have a Valley Creek site, which is on the south end of our property, and we really hit the garlic mustard and Dames rocket pretty aggressively down there, both with spraying and hand pulling, to some pretty great results. And we were able to get in then this fall with a pretty significant amount of native shrubs and trees. And I was over the moon, exuberantly enthusiastic, until I went out there last week and saw the deer browse. So that was a little bit of a bummer, hoping that they'll come back, but it was so nice to, you know, do that. Well, the chem treatment and all of that, and then also be able to get in there and do the good stuff and know that, you know, I wasn't just destroying some stuff, but actually giving back and doing some good things. So that was a nice project that we had going on. We have roughly 1,500 acres down here, and we have several pretty large scale restorations going on, targeting the usual suspects: buckthorn, honeysuckle, some barberry in different places. One of the most recent grant opportunities or grant funding that we received was for a 30-acre parcel, which is just north of Afton. It's a pretty exciting thing. It's a collaboration between Afton, Washington County, Tara helped with that, the DNR, and Bellwin. And this parcel is, we're going to start working on that, restoring that pretty quick here. And that's going to be an area that's going to be open for public hiking. So it'll be another great green space in Washington County. We still are targeting our Grecian foxglove issue that we have. We have a pretty major, have had a pretty major outbreak at our Stagecoach Prairie public hiking area for quite a few years now. So we're still hand pulling and spraying, trying different strategies on that. And then we also, if you made it down here to hike this last year, you'll notice that we had a huge infestation of amber maple, and I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Justin to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, amber maple is a huge problem for us. It's interesting that it wasn't mentioned, I guess, around the group, but for Bellwin, amber maple is probably a bigger problem than buckthorn, maybe not in acreage, but in complexity. A few years ago, we were doing some chemical management in a brome field, and did our usual package, and came back the next year expecting to see the grasses emerging and recovering from a pretty nasty herbicide application. And that's not what I found. I actually found the amber maple recovering quite nicely and getting ready to grow and canopy out just like it was the year before. It's not something I'm accustomed to. Normally when we go out there with those types of herbicide packages, it really eradicates things. So upon some further study, we discovered that we really don't have a good chemical control on amber maple, especially amber maple that has been mowed many years in a row. So we spent 2020 in the middle of a pandemic, which makes it really hard, doing some test plots and research on different types of modes of action of herbicides and different things to try to get something in this plant that will kill it. Acer maples are extremely easy to kill with certain types of herbicide. Problem is, like Karen Schick mentioned earlier, you know, that avoiding eradicating everything. And we're hopeful. We came up with, working with some people, we came up with a really good plan and a good herbicide mix. And it showed terrible results almost all summer. But then as it got to fall, it just kept doing its thing. And I really like what's happening. It's really working really slowly in the plant, and everything that we new wood dye sort of looks sick and looks like it's going to maybe make it some, but we're really potentially achieving control on the Emmer maple. So I'm really excited to see that in the spring. Hopefully next time we meet, I can say, you know, this is what we did, and you know, hopefully other people can replicate it, have good success, because it's Emmer maple really presents a nasty problem that buckthorn doesn't. And we thought we had it. We thought we were doing pretty good, burning and mowing and all that, but it proved us wrong. So yeah, that's one of the main things that we are really struggling with at this point at Bellwin, and hopefully we're on the right road now.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Keep us posted on the Emmer maple study and what next year, maybe next year will be enlightening as to what the right path is for that.
Yeah, well, you know, it's, you know me, I'm not one to experiment with herbicide, right, Tara? So it should tell you just how bad this actually was. But yeah, we'll let you know as soon as we have good information.
Yeah, great. Any other nonprofits? I think I've scrolled through and looked, or any open seats. I know we're kind of pushing time here, but anyone else want to jump in before I wrap up the meeting?
Hi, this is
Okay.
Mike Rhodes.
Oh, yeah.
I'm with the National Park Service also.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say hi. I got skipped over earlier.
Yeah.
And Isaiah covered pretty well what we've been working on down in Washington County this last year. And of course, we're also, you know, doing similar work all throughout the St. Croix Riverway. So I know we're short on time, so I'll just keep it short.
Yeah, no, thanks for saying hi. Okay, well, honestly, it's been a really enlightening, normally talking about invasive species can kind of be a downer of a meeting, but I feel really uplifted by all the work that's going on, especially in a challenging year. And what I would love to hear more on, so we'll send out probably a recording of this meeting and the notes if you want the Cliff Notes version and a list of everyone in the room so you guys can continue the conversations. I also would like to know more about outreach needs. Like if you had 3 species or topics that you would like to have people doing outreach on, no promises, but I would love to know what they are so we can prioritize our efforts there. We don't have a lot of time to spend, so where should we spend it? So I'll feel free to just email me or contact me with your priorities, or I will also package it up into probably an email that we send out. So with that, thanks everybody, and stay warm and have a good rest of the day.